Hey guys, welcome into another episode of From the Wing. I'm Christian Clark, the Pelicans beat writer for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. On today's show, we're going to grade Willie Green's season. We're going to talk about this exchange between Willie Green and Brandon Ingram that got reported on by here locally and then at the national level. We're going to talk about Larry Nance Jr., his comments from exit interviews essentially saying that no, the Pelicans are not close to contention. And then we're going to finish up with some local TV ratings because I can't go more than 3 episodes without talking about local TV ratings. I'm obsessed. I just am. I have a sickness and I'm really sorry. But before we get to do any of that, Adam, I know we've both been, watching all these playoff games every night. Game 2 of Minnesota and Denver was one of the more noteworthy games that has happened so far in the postseason. I mean, maybe the most noteworthy game of Minnesota without Rudy Gobert just grinding Denver into dust. And I was thinking a lot about Nickeil Alexander-Walker during that game last night. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was a 17th pick in 2019. Pelicans brought him in. Pretty rocky start to his NBA career at the Pelicans. He gets moved to Portland, never even plays a game for Portland, gets moved to Utah, never really finds his footing there, gets moved to Minnesota, and with the Timberwolves under Chris Finch, an assistant coach with the Pelicans, has found a niche for himself in the NBA as this incredible, rangy perimeter defender who knows his role on offense. It's something I enjoy seeing of a guy, mid first round pick coming in struggling, it taking a couple years, changing teams a couple of times, and then him just figuring it out. It's been cool to see.
Yeah, like this is what happens. Like when you draft like mid-round guys, like this is what happens. We hypothesize about it all the time when we have a guy that feels like he's not reaching his potential. Like we had these conversations about Jackson Hayes. Like if there's something that can reach him, maybe it's getting moved to other teams and getting to a second contract. Maybe that's the thing that wakes him up. In Naw's case, he kind of walked into a lot of responsibility right out the gate, playing for the Pelicans, and maybe some outsized expectations. And like we talked about last episode with Shea and Zion, like your whole world in the NBA is about expectations. The way that you're judged, the way that we love you is based on whether or not we expected you to do what you did. Jalen Brunson is the most romantic player in the league right now because we started the season and mid-season, we were having a conversation about how he can't be a 1 on a great team. So it's fun to see him break those expectations. Nickeil is, starting to float around the middle of the league, the role player bench stuff. And you're like, I don't know. Is he going to figure something out? Had some good run to Jazz. I think the Blazers are probably upset with themselves now. But it's great whenever you see a guy figure it out. And this is perfect for him. Like he lands with a coach that already knows him, that knew he was a deflection king even when he was here. So it's not hard to believe that was going to be a thing that came. The hard part was for him was a consolidated offensive role where he only did the things that he's good at. Instead, like we were having him dabble with like a little bit of creation, generate his own shot, kind of run around and take jumpers. And that's just a lot for a young dude. And so now he is, he's like a 7th man, like first wing off the bench in this defensive role where he's the other Jaden McDaniels at times. And when they lose a guy, he steps into the starting lineup and his job is to knock down threes and open jumpers and handle a little, he's a complementary player in design and role and execution. And it's working out great for him.
I remember something that podcaster, former Pelican, and potential Lakers coach JJ Redick said when the Pelicans had Nickeil. Him and Nickeil had a pretty close relationship. JJ was one of Nickeil's vets. And JJ just seemed very confident that Nickeil would find his place in the NBA. And his rationale was basically that Nickeil is a worker. And JJ says more often than not, people who really live and breathe this stuff, they figure out a way to stick around. And, like Nickeil is not Patrick Beverley either in terms of being undersized and having to do all of this on grit. I mean, he is a big guard. He's 6'5". He has a crazy wingspan. I don't know what it is officially. Like it looks like it's 6'10" or something like that. I mean, arms that kind of go on forever. Like you could always see the skill there, but he was just playing in a completely different way with the Pelicans. I mean, like the shot selection was, I mean,
Everything,
mind
every,
numbing
everything.
sometimes. I mean, even, they experimented with starting him for like 20 games in Willie Green's first year, and they got off to just this awful start. Of course, there was no Zion or anything. And I mean, what I remember during that time, like that period of games, the 20 games Nickeil started, was like, good God, this shot selection just like makes me want to, gouge my eyes out with a pen or something like that. And, he's a young guy. Like sometimes it takes multiple teams. It takes years to figure it out. We should say in Nickeil's defense, like he didn't come in the most stable situation. He had 3 head coaches in his first 3 years: Alvin Gentry, Stan Van Gundy, and then Willie Green. I think even Chris Finch, like he in a story at the Star Tribune said that he was like, yeah, like Nickeil was being asked to do a lot of different things. Like I just helped clarify what his role is. Like you are here to be a hounding on the ball defender. We saw that in that incredible possession last night with, I think it was Nickeil and Jaden McDaniels, just harassing Jamal Murray up the floor. I think Jamal shot 3 of 18 in game 2, was so frustrated, pissed off, he threw a heat pack onto the floor while he was on the bench. I mean, you almost never see great playoff performers like that get frustrated to the degree that Jamal Murray was. I mean, he had nothing last night. I mean, what the Timberwolves did, especially without Rudy Gobert, was incredible defensively. Nickeil was definitely a part of that. But yeah, the quote from Finch, I pulled it out. Not everything that happened in New Orleans, where he spent part of his first 3 seasons, was Alexander's fault. Finch said the coaching staff and the front office had different visions of the player Alexander Walker could become. He said Alexander Walker got so many mixed messages, he didn't know if he was coming or going.
That's a tough scene. It's a real tough scene.
I felt like that's a little at the Pelicans front office too.
Yeah, I mean, he said, I thought differently than David Griffin did. He may as well have written that as a sentence.
Do you think those guys disagreed about some stuff?
Never.
Okay.
Certainly there's no salt there whatsoever. They get along swimmingly. And everybody that was on Alvin's staff, I'm sure, has romantic feelings, not named Fred Vinson. Look, I mean, if anybody was going to get this right about Nickeil, it's a guy that saw him and had this opinion of him already. And now he got him in realistic circumstances where the guys in Minnesota aren't invested in trying to force the pick to be good. That's the great thing about the second contract and the third contract. The expectations, if they were outsized, get adjusted because your market has said what you are. He's moved on to his 4th team. So of course, now it's put up or shut up time. And Finch feels really confident, like you're a star role player and I'm going to make it happen. And the role has been consistent all year. This is not new. This is like, he got handed this the same way Case and Wallace got his role in OKC. It was like, here's the small portion right out the gate. And we're going to keep giving you a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then we're going to trust you a lot. And he's come up aces all year. The defense has been there all year. The 3-point shooting consistency, because of what he's taking, like he's taking what he's being given. He's taking the open stuff that he's getting as a product of the people that he's around. And he's been knocking them down. He's been really knocking them down. It's fun to see. Like, you want to see guys work out. I don't want to see guys fall out of the league, especially guys that are likable. I remember the stories about like him following JJ around, like picking his brain every minute of the day, trying to figure out what he could do differently and everything. And so that's what made it hard to see him struggle in a Pelicans jersey, because you knew it wasn't an effort thing. You knew it wasn't buy-in. He just hadn't learned the game yet. And he was a project player coming out of, it was Virginia Tech, right?
Yeah, Virginia Tech. He also was very mentally busy. Like, he's a very thoughtful guy. And you almost came away from some of that stuff as like, is he just getting in his head a little bit too much? I mean, I just think, the stuff he went through gave him perspective, calmed down a little bit. And it's just cool to see. It's just cool to see guys, go through stuff earlier in their careers who really work at it to be able to like find a place in the NBA. And I can't remember what his contract situation was, but he's not making very much money. But after this deal is done, I mean, he's going to get a deal because he's a really valuable player. I mean, he's like one of those guys that's like top 7, top 8 player. Bring him off the bench on a team that can make a run in the playoffs. Clearly.
Yeah, he's gonna get some double-digit millions. Like it's gonna happen. So, especially with the salary cap going up, like he may end up knocking on like his final year being like $20 million for all we know, depending on where it is. So yeah, cool for him. And you just want to see guys you like do well. Do we start preparing to wear like black and play sad music if the Nuggets go down 0-3? Do we wait? Do we get nervous now? Are we nervous now? Are we still respecting the champions, or do we hold out for 0-3 and then go, oh damn? Because I'm worried about Murray today. I don't think he's gonna play better in the series. He looks not great.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Like I don't think the Nuggets are gonna win this series. Jamal, it's dealing with, I think, a left calf strain. He's trying to play through it. I mean, like if you watch that first round series of Denver and Minnesota last year, I mean, the Timberwolves did make Jamal really, really work for it. And he scored, despite really tough coverage sometimes, but they are better and deeper in terms of the guys that they can throw at you on the perimeter. And he just doesn't look great right now. And I agree. I mean, if Jamal's not Jamal, they don't have a chance. I was coming into the series weird. Like, I think Minnesota can absolutely win. I would have picked Denver. I think I would have picked Denver in 7, but no, I don't think the Nuggets can win. And
I would have expected sorry, I am fighting like for multiple frogs in my throat right now. I also expected to see, like, I was waiting for Peyton Watson to have a role in this series, and like a Holiday brother is getting minutes. Like, I feel a little weird on the like rotation side against all this size, not seeing Peyton Watson with the role they were playing with all year. Like, I just felt like he'd come in and add like energy, defense, and run the floor a little bit, and that's not there. But Jamal just looks slow, and he's in defensive hell. So like that jet first step that he typically has and the springiness that he typically has when he's healthy just doesn't appear to be there. And they're playing incredible defense, which is easy when Gobert goes from, which we're not going to talk about this. Nobody's going to talk about this enough, but Gobert isn't just what he's always been. Like, they're not just purely doing drop and you feed everybody into Gobert and he cleans everything up like they did in Utah. It's that mixed with him like switching underneath against certain matchups and sometimes going out on guards and recovering and like baiting in pick and roll coverage, like baiting the pass. Like, he's got a couple of plays where he jab steps towards Joker like 8 feet away from the basket, knowing there's a pass over his back, and takes 2 steps, goes up and stops an alley-oop to Aaron Gordon. Like, I mean, that was the play of game 1. I mean, that Jokic to Gordon alley-oop, it was viewed as this unstoppable play coming into the playoffs, and it was really tight, and Denver needed to convert that one to really have a chance in game 1, and Gobert just sat back there, kind of faked like he was going to go up to Jokic, got back and disrupted the lob pass, and it was like, whoa, the Nuggets' unstoppable move just got blown up. I thought it was really, really interesting, and like, it's fascinating to me that Connolly did the Denver thing and then built the thing that beats Denver. I could listen to somebody talk about that for 3 hours. The fact that the guy builds the Denver thing and, also used to be here. Sad. Builds the Denver thing. And then the first thing he does is build the thing that we all question, that we're all nervous about when the Gobert trade happens. We're like, why would you do this? This is a lot. And it was like, oh, it's specifically to beat my old team because we're going to need to. And yeah. See, people are saying that, and I don't think he approached it as, oh, I'm building this specifically to beat my old team. I mean, I just think he looked at it as like, Towns is not a very good defensive 5. And if you slide him up to power forward, it's
it's a lot better. And then, he can still do what he does offensively and be this 50, 40, 90 guy. I mean, he's built a great team. And the other part of it is Anthony Edwards made the leap, and he made the leap really early. I mean, he's 22 years old. That's been one of my biggest notes in the playoffs. Anthony Edwards and Paolo Banchero, 22 and 21 years old. Those guys are dogs. Like there's a lot of anxiety about who's the next wave of great American basketball players, because so many of these recent MVPs are international players. Like who is coming to step in for LeBron and Steph? These guys are on the way out, and in the playoffs, I mean, man, Ant, Paolo, like those two guys are super young guys who've really shown me something.
Yeah, Ant's been answering the questions all year slowly too, and now the microscope, like in a very similar way to things going poorly in the OKC series for the Pelicans, highlighting something that was already happening during the season. This has highlighted, like, the question marks with him are, can he be more patient all around in his game, like in his shot selection, in his ball movement, and can he make passes? Like, can he make good plays on his drives?
Yeah, make the right play consistently enough.
And he started to do that. Like this year, him playing next to Conley, taking a little bit of that burden away from him of like just carrying the ball as much as he was, and just every now and then being able to take a couple sets off because Conley's going to run the show and just keep everybody on time. It cannot go untalked about how perfect of a fit Mike Conley was there, and how jealous literally every team in the NBA that doesn't have like a star floor setting point guard is, like, to not have a Conley. Who wouldn't love Mike Conley right now? But yeah, I'm making every single play. I'm not a grifter, but I'm going to sell the contact if you hit me. And it's been the perfect balance of aggression, knowing when to go, knowing when he needs to take over, knowing when he takes a jumper. A couple of years ago, even a year ago, a couple of these games would have just been, I'm going to take 9 threes and hope I make them. And he'd just occasionally do that. Now it's just like all in the context of the offense. It's all in the context of the game. He's content to find guys, and now he's saying all the right stuff too. Like, it's infuriating how like good of a teammate him and Wemby are. Really makes me envious.
All right, let's transition to a little Pelicans talk.
We probably
want to get into Willie Green's season, and I won't bury the lead here. There was it wasn't even a story. It was Shams Charania talking about it on his show about an exchange. That was the word he used, exchange that Willie Green and Brandon Ingram had during game 2 of the first round series against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Basically, Ingram told Green he wanted the ball and that he wanted Willie Green to help him get the ball. Shamit Dua, who writes an excellent Substack, In the Know Substack, which you should subscribe to if you're already not. I think we're even had this before Shams and did a nice job of laying this out. So kudos to him. What did you make of the quote exchange?
Not as much as a lot of people. I also just wasn't very online today, so I found out about it like well after people were having conversations. But the first thing I go to is like, Brandon struggled in this series, and like we heard a question after game 1 about like, how do you get more opportunities for Brandon? And Willie's answer was, you don't. You ride the offense. You take what they give you, because the truth of it is OKC's defense is great, and they're going to make you take some things, and you're going to have to be okay with it. And with what they have with no Zion out there, like, role players are going to have to make shots.
Yeah, that's part of this context. That's part of this context. Brandon struggled in game 1, and Willie Green is asked directly, like, how do you free him up? And he says, we don't free him up. He has to be better. I mean, that was the gist of it. So that was the context going into game 2 of Willie Green telling Brandon Ingram, be better.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just also think about those two, and they've had a pretty tight relationship in Willie's tenure. So, like, I don't think of it as anything like toxic or anything. It's like, B.I.'s struggling out there, and he probably said some shit, because you do that in the heat of competition, and he's struggling and he doesn't know what the answer is. And they did some stuff, like they ran some actions and stuff to try and get him the ball at the nail, to try and like get the ball to him earlier in possessions, run, they ran as many screens and picks at Dort as they could, though. He ran through everything. So it just kind of is what it is. I think that's I'd be frustrated too if I'm him. Like Dort had him completely locked up. And that probably is the reasonable ask to him, is like, get me free. And there's we tried. we tried. So yeah, I don't really care that much. It's weird. The weird part is it getting out. And like why does it get out? But other than that, like, it's just you don't want to hear that stuff come out, but I didn't think much of it because I think do I think their relationship is worse today for that? No, probably not.
Yeah, and like anytime stuff gets leaked, people really get the conspiracy hat on, and it's like, what's the motive behind this? And like my read on this one is just people talk, man. They do, like if noteworthy stuff happens, sometimes they just talk. And I mean, my reading of this, I don't think either side looks worse than the other. I mean, I don't think it reflects great on either side here. I mean, I think Brandon had a really bad series and needs to play better. And I think, if you're going to criticize Willie Green for a lack of creativity on offense, I think there's some merit to that. But I didn't think this was like a massive deal or anything like that. I mean, the one thing I'll say is, and we're going to get into like the full Willie Green discussion for this year, and there was a lot of good. There really was. I mean, I know the way it ended was awful, but a lot of good before that. But I do think like the criticism of the Pelicans offense, especially as it has existed without Zion Williamson for the last 2 seasons, those are data points that like do concern me a little bit. I mean, last season when Zion went down with the right hamstring injury, that was a stretch of 45 games. The Pelicans finished 26th in offense over that, which was like more than half the season. And Brandon played a lot of that. CJ was hurt, played a lot of that. They had Jonas Valanciunas. Like they had useful offensive pieces and they finished 26th. And then this year in the playoffs, again, not ideal. I mean, if you coach the Pelicans, it's just not going to be ideal, I guess, because man, when is it ever ideal? But look, they averaged 93.5 points per 100 possessions. Worst offensive showing by a playoff team in 8 years. The next closest team averaged 100 points per 100 possessions. So like it was the worst, and it was the worst by a lot. And like if I'm taking all the emotion out of it, I'm just looking at like those data points. I'm like, okay, there's probably something to this of the offense really craters at times.
James Borrego doesn't come here for no reason. Like he doesn't come in to help because there's nothing wrong offensively. I think we know it's not a secret that Willie's a defensive coach and leans defense and leans veterans and leans trust. And he's a young coach too. So like that's none of that surprising if that's what his approach to basketball is built on. If that's what he valued in his playing career, it's something that he leans on successfully too. Like of note, they are always a good defense. So it's not like that side of the ball is bad or should not be trusted. To me though, the thing that doesn't change is in those times when there's no BI, your initiation, because you have chosen, like you have made choices about what your ball handling looks like on this team. And in the last couple of years, they have not done anything about putting like a larger ball handler really on the team. They kind of just got ball handling by aggregation.
Oh, they drafted Dyson Daniels 8th overall.
Well, but to be a transition guard that you hope turns into a half court guard, but that has no handle. Like
yeah, he's still a kid. He's 2 years into his career. He has not panned out in the way you'd hoped yet. There's plenty of time. He's already great on defense, but offensively, you'd like him to become that guy, but he hasn't become that guy yet.
Sure. And you just wouldn't, that wasn't a move to like change primary initiation today. And I think when you bring CJ in alongside Brandon and alongside Zion, you are looking at a functional ball handling role that now doesn't exist because Brandon's going to play on the ball to get his. Zion's going to play on the ball to get his. To some degree, CJ will as well. And if you get in a pinch, CJ becomes the ball handler. He can run plays. You trust him. He's smart enough. He knows the whole offense, all that stuff. the dream here is if Jose was like just a little bit bigger.
I think we kind of like had this discussion during the season. And I think the name I threw out is like, who's the ideal guy to fit in between those three guys? And I think I said like Derek White. I don't know.
Yeah. So like, that's the thing. Derek White has from his position and from his role has an excess of ball handling skill and passing for what that role typically is. Guys like him on the numbers he's on the contract he's on, where he's at in his career, don't normally like renaissance into the elite of the elite of role players. And like, that's the thing you have to find. Like maybe Herb is like all of a sudden becomes like even a little bit better. And they've been training him to initiate, like he's been doing more stuff on ball, but they really have tried to fill the need with everybody. Najee takes a little bit, Herb takes a little bit, CJ takes a little bit. So you have chosen not to emphasize that. So then when Zion's not there, it's overwhelmingly going to be on CJ and BI to generate your offense. And against certain matchups, either one of those guys can have a terrible night because schematically guys can beat them. So yeah, I think you chose to have this and you wrote it out, and we got a magnifying glass put on it that when you've chosen to go short on ball handling, it's hard.
Something I said at the beginning of the season was when, like the Borrego hiring was billed as, this is our move to try to address our offensive deficiencies. And we hope he's going to change the offense to consistently take more 3-pointers and play faster and make quicker decisions. And I think Borrego had some success in Charlotte, which was not a roster of world beaters or anything, but he had some success with guard heavy rosters, right? It was LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier and, Devontae Graham was even in there a little bit, but also, Miles Bridges, like a lot of these pieces who can handle the ball, push it, were willing to jack up threes. I just think the personnel on this roster was a lot different than what he had in Charlotte. Like, this is not that type of, guard heavy roster that they had in Charlotte. It's just a different roster. It's more of a wing heavy roster. And yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here wondering, like, how much impact did Borrego have on the offense? I mean, they finished 11th. I mean, they were 20th last year, and a lot of that was just the bottom completely falling out after Zion went down. Like, they were 11th. It's not like it was horrible during the regular season, but then I'm not like, it never looked great, I would say. And then in the playoffs, it's like, oof. I mean, this is as rough as it could be.
They're not 11th. Zion was 11th. They're more like 18th to 25th. Like, they were in the same place that now, like, Minnesota has escaped. Minnesota had offensive problems all year. And it was a lot of the same stuff, like jockeying, figuring out who needs to have the ball, who's supposed to make decisions late. And they figured it out. And they figured it out in time, and Ant takes a leap in time, and we lose Zion right as he's taking his leap to beat the Lakers. So, like, there were going to be some parallels there. It really felt like Zion found a gear that was the similar to what we're seeing from Anthony Edwards. And like, I know I have to take over on these 3 possessions, and I'm going to do it. And now I'm going to take the ball away from you on this one. Yeah, it's in terms of Borrego's impact, like, it's hard to say where you see it, other than like maybe his assistance in CJ completely revolutionizing his role when that took place. But this is more like if his options to shoot threes were all Caleb Martin. That was somebody else that was on that Hornets team, but not quite the shooter or skilled player. He was a little farther down the list. And the thing about like Miles and LaMelo and all them, like, they're still jacking threes. Like, somewhere out there, Miles Bridges and Terry Rozier are chucking balls right now. Devontae Graham, he did it to us from the Spurs. God damn it. He has never been shy. So if it's the 3 of those and LaMelo Ball, like, that's such a dynamically different situation than us.
Did you see LaMelo Ball's back tattoo?
Oh, it's terrible. It's so rough. I can't.
I thought you told me before we went on air that you were going to get a matching one.
Oh yeah, I totally did that. Me you know, because I'm just like loaded up here with on my opaqueness. Look at all these tats I got. I'm translucent. Like I feel like if you put the ink in me, it would bleed through organs. It would just seep right through, and like my eyes would change colors and stuff. Like it would be in my bloodstream. So yeah, I don't know. Like to this day, I can't tell you where. I'd like to tell you there's a Borrego footprint. We heard a lot of things that sounded Borrego-esque, and they were rarely achieved. I think like reality, and reality is easy to have when the season's over. Who the hell was going to shoot those threes? Like, how the hell were you going to get to 40? Like, in what way? When you don't really have guys that are those kind of players that are like willingly taking transition looks all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of the answer to that is you're playing Jordan Hawkins instead of Jose Alvarado, and you're playing Matt Ryan instead of Najee Marshall. And the Pelicans they didn't do that this year. And you can look at the bench point differential, and it was second in the NBA during the regular season. In the playoffs, you know, Jose shot it really poorly. I mean, we know what happened, but that's part of the answer to that question is you choose to play more offensively oriented players in your rotation.
And guys got to beat guys too. Like you gave Jose a breath of air, and what did he do in the regular season? He took the damn roll away from you, and that was it. Like that's the tough part for me is like you can't just, and Griff has said this no less than 100 times since he got here. Like and I think some of this was like directed straight at Jackson Hayes when he got tossed into the lineup early his rookie season. But you can't just give guys a role. You can't just give guys, you know, what they're going to be. Like they have to earn it to some degree. And so like I would love to. I can't get mad about Matt Ryan and Jordan Hawkins not playing. I can't, especially like Jordan. The expectations of him just like having an outsized role. It's a tough spot to be in, to have expectations for your team and also be expected to develop a rookie who is deficient, like has clear deficiencies that are not going to go away in a year. And like, we're going to bless him because he can shoot the threes, because there's not a lot else he's going to do for you. And he was messing up. Like, it's one thing to be bad at defense because you're small. We were both big time when they made the pick. We were like aggressively in Jordan Hawkins camp. Like, I don't even think he's a bad defender based on what I saw in college. He's just small and he gets pushed around, he gets targeted, but he's not in the wrong place, things like that. I saw him be in the wrong place. I saw him miss basic rotation stuff. I saw him late on every single switch that he had to make. And so it's like hard to be like, oh, but he can run around and get threes, because he's not a creator either. So it's not a guard handle. It's not a creator, and he can't defend at all. And he's actually breaking your defense. He's giving them open shots. Not just that he's getting physically beat. He's giving away open shots. And then Matt Ryan, like, it's an end of the bench guy that you signed off the street, like prioritizing his playing time. Like Najee and Jose took the roles for whatever that's worth. Najee had a really solid season, really lit it up from the corner. Jose they were both like the spark plug all year. Whenever we started slow, whenever that first run of offense is bad, they come out, juice the game, and then all of a sudden you're back in it. Did it all year. It just got highlighted for why you can't rely on that in the playoffs.
The one thing that's like just objective is a big part of the success they had in the regular season was just beating the crap out of teams with bench heavy units, like a star and a lot of players who came off the Pelicans bench, and Jose and Najee were a big part of that. And the playoffs went poorly, and you guys can wring yourselves into knots over like, could they have gotten Hawkins and Matt Ryan more minutes and they would have been better in the playoffs? Look, you can have that argument. You can. I just don't want to. All right, Adam.
He'll leave it to me.
Get out your red pen. What is your final grade for Willie Green for the 2023-2024 season?
I'll contextualize just a slight bit in that I don't want to lose that this season, as great as Zion came along, he did not start that way. And for Willie and for BI specifically, this is a dynamic ask of a year where you have to start playing one way and transition to another way when the guy finally gets in shape enough to do it. And both of them had to change their expectations throughout the season. They improve again. They get to 49 wins in a record-breaking West in terms of the number of teams over 50 wins and the number of winning teams. I give it a B. I give it a solid B, and all of the criticism is like the lack of offensive creativity, the lack of ability to assert your will on better teams. But like, it's a solid B for me. Like, I'm not mad about it at all. I think he's like on track. I have questions though, and the questions now set up a year where it feels very make or break.
I think that's fair. I had the same grade, in my head. I would give him a B for this year. And I think you're right. He's going to be in year 4 next year. I mean, there was almost pressure on Willie Green like right away when he got this job in some ways. I mean,
True.
They not him, the Pelicans kind of, and Zion mangled the first 2 years of Zion's career. And then you're at the point where it's like, this has got to get better in a hurry or we risk losing this guy. And then he can't get on the court and he plays 29 games in the first 2 years that Willie's the head coach. It's, he's come in and had to, produce in some ways right away. And then I think he's going to be back in the pressure cooker at the start of next season. Like there's going to be pressure to win right away if they start the season 6-8. What happens if they start the season 7-12? But that's many months in advance. I think a B is fair from what we saw from Willie Green this year. All right, Adam, let's talk about Larry Nance's exit interview comments. Kind of a dour exit interview sesh with Mr. Larry, who is usually pretty positive. I thought like one of the more interesting things that anyone said, Larry was asked, how close are you guys to reaching elite level? And Larry said, we're not close. We're not close. At the time we were building it into it, B.I. hurt himself into Orlando. Then when B.I. gets back, Z hurts himself. We're taking punch after punch. Unfortunately, that seems to be the bug that has bitten us the past few years. Everyone around here knows the ceiling on this team is way higher than what we've hit, but you only get X amount of opportunities and chances to prove it. We all know decisions have to be made. Do you think Larry was still just so disappointed from the way it ended that colored this? I mean, do you think that is like a fair way of looking at it? What did you think about what Larry had to say?
I think, the only thing I probably take any umbrage with is we probably disagree a little bit about what we think the ceiling of the team is and how like far away from reaching it they are. But he's a guy that's on the team and, he's looking at BI and Zion's talent level and saying we should be able to get somewhere. I think there are some realities about that fit and that are inescapable at this point. Even when it was at its best and healthiest, it was not a highly functional offense, even for like a few possessions at a time. Like, look, we would have settled for seeing 5 or 10 possessions where they get hot and then they lose it. It wasn't even that. It was just Zion did something really amazing or he didn't. BI kind of took a back seat and every once in a while I got in a pocket and rose up and made a shot. But it was not like you didn't have this Zion BI pick and roll that was causing defenses hell. It was not a feature. We saw it a handful of times. It never materialized. And that's the thing it needs to be for those two guys. They have to be a threat at the same time. And we were not able to see that. We saw some scoring, but it was typically Zion just being Zion and like breaking through on his own. So, other than that, I think Larry's statement is just factual, like just really, really rawly factual. Like it really, the truest thing in there is it's one thing to want to be something and to think you can be more, but you don't just get 3 and 4 years to do it. It's not the reality of the NBA. We just talked about Willie. Maybe this tenure has not been fair. It is honestly, I would say it hasn't been fair for a rookie coach to take over this team and deal with the crap he has had to deal with. And he's given you great defenses and progressively winning teams and playoff teams, despite all that crap. But that's the reality of the NBA. The reality is, like everybody's saying, everyone's going to be better next year. Teams that were not in it this year are going to be in it next year. They just don't, these guys just don't get time.
And I agree with that completely. It is unfair. So what? Win anyway. That's what it is. That is the life you have chosen.
Yep.
You get paid an incredible amount of money to play a game. That's what comes with it. It is you're asked to perform in less than ideal circumstances, and like that's kind of been my frustration. You know, one of my frustrations with Brandon at times. It's like, you know, it almost seems like the conditions have to be ideal for him for the roots to spread and for him to flower. And it's like, can you flower when, you know, the weather isn't great out, when there's some clay in there in the sand, you know, or in the dirt with you, and it's like kind of sandy dirt. And yeah, I thought what Larry said was good. I mean, it's not fair. You have to be able to succeed anyway, and you only get so many chances. And you know, as we talked about last week, to me, it does feel like change is coming. I don't see any way Jonas Valanciunas can be back. Like, man, I've even had people around the team tell me he can't come back. Like, not that the Pelicans wouldn't want him, more so of like, for him in his career, you can't re-sign with the Pelicans after, I don't want to say what they've done to you, but the way the last few years has been handled. Doing him dirty sounds too strong to me, but Jonas Valanciunas was not set up for success going into unrestricted free agency this summer. Let's just put it that way.
I mean, we just talked about an unfair NBA. Yeah. So I struggle to worry about the, you know, what fourth team veteran that's this far into his career getting ideal circumstances out of post play, because that's just not reality in the NBA anymore. Nope. So there's not a lot of places, like, as much as say he has ideal circumstances, who are the teams that are excited to sign a starting post big? Not many. It is, and one who's like him. It's not what we do anymore. So he is, by role definition, by skill, he is going to be a backup somewhere. I wondered mid-season, like, if you're Philly, would you, with Embiid hurt, like, would you want to grab him and have him as like the spot starter, and then have him as the go-to backup because you run so much through Embiid? It won't be that different. He just won't take the threes. That felt like the only thing that was out there for Jonas that was like, let's touch the heights one last time. Now, like, I think his market is backup big. I think his market is backup center, because this is not what teams want to run. You had it. He still has potent post play. He can still really abuse guys. He's like one of the like strongest dudes down there, but it's just not in the NBA anymore. So
yeah. So there's got to be a new starting center, and then the other one to watch is obviously Ingram. And we said right after the trade deadline, don't be surprised if the Pelicans and the Cavaliers talk again this summer about a lot of different things. You know, maybe New Orleans and Atlanta could talk again. Like, those are the two teams you like just hear the most about in league circles, of like, well, are New Orleans and Cleveland, or New Orleans and Atlanta going to talk again? Maybe they could go a more creative route. I mean, I will say that I don't think it is an inevitability that Brandon Ingram is traded. I could see a world where he's back for an extension on, you know, less than the max, but it's definitely a possibility.
Wait, but people I've never heard of said he will not be offered an extension, and did not even say sources said. So I should just run with that. That tweet blew my mind. Not to go Twitter. I know you hate Twitter stuff, but not to go Twitter, but to go Twitter. The tweet didn't even say sources said. It didn't even like pretend to be reporting. And I was like, okay, cool. The GM really believes there's no world where he might have to re-sign this guy. Like, of course you have to be prepared to re-sign this guy. The market may not materialize in the way that you want. Like, that is one of the fallback options, and it has to be if you're a reasonable person. Like, yes, you're going to make some calls. You're probably, I would think you'd have interest from Detroit as well, who just like really needs to put something around Cade that works at this point before everyone there gets fired. but that's gonna be a little weird because they're hiring a Pobo now, and we don't even know what Weaver's power is. But I think like that's another team to like think about.
It's always good when you give a veteran head coach the most money a coach has ever got, and then have to hire over him the next year, right?
Oh, Monty. I was really happy for Monty when he did the Phoenix stuff, and I thought he got robbed of Coach of the Year for a season, and all that was cool. But I have no idea what he's doing in Detroit other than trying to get fired, because none of the decisions this year made any sense. Nothing.
He's being cold. That's what he's doing. My parents are from Michigan.
He's just upset about the weather.
He's being cold.
Anyway, yeah, so I naturally, you have to think about, I think there's just some realities with BI now. I don't think you can continue to ask questions about, this upper level of offensive potential. I think he's a long ISO scorer that has some problems in the style of game that he came up in. Like, there are skills he does not have and an athleticism level that he does not have that just don't make him the most pliable person in the world. And I think realistically, the expectation I have, the highest expectation I could possibly have at this point, is that he has like the late career DeMar DeRozan 2 or 3 year breakout when he really buys into creating out of those post and nail touches and really, really defends. Like, I could see that being like an upper tier thing to happen for him. But you think about everybody else and like, it doesn't seem like reality. The rest of it doesn't. Like, Chris Middleton was somebody I thought about that was like, yeah, that could, like, you could see that. It's not really. He's really going to have to lean into the defense and just be better with his decision-making offensively, or just have a more limited role offensively and accept it. But it seems like we've just learned that at this point. Like, it's been too long to say that these other skills are going to flash that like have just never shown their faces in years. So I think we're just at a reality with him.
The last thing I got for you, some notes about viewership on local stations of Pelicans games this year. I've got a story that will run on Noel.com on Wednesday morning. Pulled all of the Nielsen data, which I thought was worth looking at, given that 69 of these games were on Bally, and we got to compare that with the 7 games that were on WVUE, Fox 8. And hey, how watched were the Bally games versus the games that the Pelicans put over the air? And it turns out the over the air games were way more watched than the Bally games. The 69 Bally games averaged about 13,000 households in the New Orleans domestic market area. The 7 games that they put on WVUE, 3 of them were on Bounce. Remember, the 7 games on WVUE did more than 46,000 households. Basically, the way to think about this, the New Orleans DMA, which is 12 counties in Louisiana, 12 parishes in Louisiana and 2 counties in Mississippi, basically 46,000 households were watching the games that they put out over the air, which feels like a significant slice of pie. And then that 13,000 households that people are watching on Bally, it feels like a very small slice of pie. That feels like a slice of pie that I would need another slice of pie after on Thanksgiving.
I think the most important thing here is the ratio. It's going to be hard for people to contextualize, like, is 46,000 sounds like a lot of households. The biggest thing here is WVUE more than triples up your Bally's share. So
that's like a big number. It's a real number. It's like, wow, almost 50,000 households with people around here watch.
Those games, they lost them all. They lost every one of those games, and they were pretty embarrassing. And they still watched it. So like, and there's a whole nother conversation to have about like how many people switch to streaming. Like, I don't watch on any of this regular TV anymore. That's not how I view. That's not how a lot of people view. I had a lot of friends that were still upset about the broadcast because even though they were going through those stations, the stations did not use their streaming feeds to push them. So you couldn't like sign into WVUE. Like, you couldn't sign into Fox 8 on your phone and watch it. you could only do it by pulling up the, pull up the rabbit ears, the HD antenna, and turn on the channel. But still, 3 times the showing. And I think some of that is logical given the situation with just being on an available channel versus one that's gate kept and not. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, if anything, with that decision. We have the now incoming, now confirmed Amazon rights, which is going to be intriguing either way.
At the national level, Amazon is going to get national rights, and Amazon has separately invested like $115 million into Bally, which looks like it'll resuscitate the bankrupt Bally monster. So there could be a world where Amazon, has national games on Saturday night, but also has, a handful of teams, local rights as well.
Yeah, and like we kind of know what it's going to be. They're going to do a bolt-on channel for NBA, and you're going to be able to watch those games on there. Look, at least you can trust the delivery. Like, that's one thing I think we'll be fine with. And if they maintain the Bally staff, I don't think that's going to upset anybody in New Orleans. So if you just give me all the same people and I can just trust that it's actually going to work, that'll be an improvement. Because I don't know if you were around when people were complaining about some of these Bally games, but dear God, especially at the beginning of the season, they couldn't even get some of the games over the air. So like the basics were being missed. So yeah, everything's an improvement. I think, obviously we'd love like free the NBA, give it to the people. But the more they expose it, the better. And it's going to be better for New Orleans. The more exposure they get, this town still needs to get to know this team, even after all this time. And like, hopefully like biggest thing is just like Zion. Hey, regardless of who's broadcasting, if you get this off season right, everybody's going to find it. They're going to find you.
Adam, how weird is it going to be if the guy who dissed Pelicans fans and said there's only 12 of you, which created the Pels 12 movement, becomes the head coach of the Lakers?
Bro, if Mind the Game was a psyop, I'm not going to know what to do with myself. I can't. So I don't think it's going to happen. But it's really funny given that Mind the Game episode 7 comes out tomorrow and they're sipping wine, talking about different actions they use and running Victory as a final play ATO. And now he's like a late contender. I think this is going to be one of those things where like his name's in the mix to appease LeBron. But like, if you look at the decisions, these last few runs, like Pelinka's done a lot of stuff that LeBron wasn't really a fan of. So it's hard to say that like LeBron, the GM, is really doing this or pulling the strings or like going to put JJ in place. He's also not under contract. So yeah, it's funny and it's intriguing. But he's been a contender for other jobs. Like he interviewed for that Raptors job. Now he was like in the final contenders for Charlotte and now the Lakers. I think this is just kind of like people respect him. It's a popular name to put out. Nobody's going to be like mad at you as a fan base to say, hey, we're going to interview JJ because everybody thinks he's smart. He's a charismatic talker. If
he does decide to go this route and become an NBA head coach, I think drastically needs to be less online. Like he strikes me as a very online person. I mean, it seems like it would be hard to be a great NBA head coach and to be extremely online. I mean, sometimes I wonder if like Joe Mazzulla is very online, I mean, Joe Mazzulla is a character. But yeah, it seems like he would have to become a lot less online.
You just talked me into it. JJ Redick for president. Put him at the helm of the Lakers. I need these tweets. I need him correcting people in their assessment of Lakers games on a Tuesday night in February. I really, oh my God. He's the first time he responds to a fan on Lakers Twitter would be yeah. Okay. We got to do it. We got to start a petition. Everybody, we need JJ to go coach the Lakers. It's too entertaining. I need him to stay online though. Contrary to Christian, I need him to be the most online coach ever and just be like, appeal to the new generation that I don't even understand. Be the most online coach ever. Do TikToks from your practice. Do all that stuff.
Just the full Dion.
Yeah, just lean all the way. Well, not the full Dion. He's losing everybody. The portal's a mess, and they tank the back half of the season, and people are mutinying. He's firing coaches in the middle of the year. Don't go. Nobody should go full Dion. But yeah, a little online. Fight with a role player here and there. Like get like an Exhibit 10 guy that you have an argument with, like deep in the replies. Like, yeah, that stuff would be great.
All right, buddy. I'm going to go turn these playoff games on. I'm excited to watch Dallas and Oklahoma City. Should be a really fun series. I am locked in, especially on the Western Conference. Thanks for doing this. We will huddle up again next week.
Cleveland lose already. We have a conversation to have.